Welcome to Chatsunami. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Chatsunami. My name's Satsunami and joining me today is the one and only connoisseur of bad movies himself, Craigy C. Craigy C, welcome back.
Thank you for having me on. I am thrilled to be talking about bad movies, so let's get straight into it.
That's not what you said when I suggested this episode.
Please stop calling me. I've changed my phone number 3 times.
That's what I've got you saved as on my phone. Craigie, please stop phoning me for the love of God. See? That's how I know it's an important call.
But when I call you...
I want to review bad films. I was like, that's not the way this works, okay?
You come to me.
So, as we've talked about on the podcast before, you and I have a long-standing history of talking about bad films and consuming them, as it were, because you used to run a absolutely fantastic night of bad movies. That's all I can describe it as on a base level, because some of them were great, some of them were bad, but that went on for quite a while, didn't it?
Yeah, I think we got pretty much like 2 years worth of time out of that. I think we did it more or less weekly for about 2 years.
Yeah, it could have gone on for a lot longer, to be fair.
Oh, well, I mean, probably for the best. For everyone's sake, it got retired eventually. But, you know, one day I want to bring it back because I got a whole bunch of new films we haven't watched yet.
Yeah, I remember there was a couple you kept saying, oh, we've got this, we've got that. But this is actually something that I was discussing with Andrew. I remember it was years ago. I think it was when the Wolf of Wednesdays were still going on, and I was telling him about where I was going and everything, and he was saying, well, why are you watching bad films on purpose? And first of all, I was like, it's none of your damn business what I do. I'm a tax-paying adult. But second of all, it was enjoyable, which is really weird to say, because nowadays if you see a bad film or play a bad game, you know, you're not as likely to finish it, are you?
Yeah, and I think part of why I wanted to do it as a group thing was it seems so much more enjoyable when there's lots of you doing it. I don't think I could sit and watch tons of bad movies on my own. I do get a sick enjoyment out of them, but it's so much funnier when it's lots of people enjoying the joke and not just you sitting in the house on your own at 2 a.m.
That's true. I mean, I've been there with Birdemic. I know the pain. Just with the tub of Ben and Jerry's. Where did my life go wrong? Phoning you at 2 a.m.
Craig, talk about Birdemic to me.
I mean, you can move house, but I'll still find you to talk about Birdemic. But yeah, you're completely right. It is one of those things that I think nowadays has been solidified as something that is very much more enjoyed as a group, as opposed to watching them on your own. And this leads me very nicely into what we're going to be talking about today. So if you hadn't guessed by now, run now while you still can. But today we're going to be talking about the wonderful world of not just bad films, but the age-old question of what makes a bad film good. And it is something that you might think, oh, it's a bit of a paradox, you know, bad film is a bad film. But there's some that just loop around into being just completely silly fun. But have you ever had one of those moments, Craig? Before we actually get into the discussion, have you ever had a moment where you've been watching a film and then you think, my God, films can be bad?
Yeah, I don't really know what started the whole Wolf of Wednesday thing for that, but I do. Pretty much as we got into watching them together, I think every single one of these terrible, terrible films has some kind of deep down redeeming quality. And I think that's what makes them so good, is that they're not, we'll get into it, but any film that has at least a spark of joy seems to be good in its own way. I think a lot of it as well is that kind of enjoyment of a group. And I think it was Red Letter Media was probably the people that got me into that. Like their YouTube channel, they would do like best of the worst and they would do terrible movies together. And that was kind of part of it, what made me go, wow, this stuff actually looks really, really, really funny. Why am I not watching this? Why am I wasting my time watching quote unquote good films? When I could be watching schlock.
What, like Citizen Kane?
Citizen Kane is absolute schlock. No,
Oh, as someone who hasn't watched it, I am deeply offended. On someone's behalf, I don't know.
No, it's good. It's a good film. But you know, I mean, like you see all these every year when the Oscars come round, and it's like all the films at the Oscars, and you're like, most of these look a bit naff. And then you see like Tammy and the T-Rex, which was like one of the ones that we watched, where it's like a girl's boyfriend gets his head his brain transplanted into a T-Rex and they still fall in love and run away together. And yeah, that's kind of story that Hollywood's too afraid to tell.
He saw the picture of the T-Rex and they thought, his story needs to be told.
We need to tell this.
We need to tell. This is going to be the magnum opus of my life, okay? Yeah, see for a second there when you said Tammy and the T-Rex, I genuinely thought this is how bad it is because there's so many, I wouldn't say copycats, but very similar films. I thought you were talking about Theodore Rex, which is the Whoopi Goldberg, like cyberpunk detective thing.
That film went out of my brain until right now. That was a whole bunch of memories just came flooding back all at once.
You and me both, because I forgot until you said Tammy and our T-Rex. I thought, was that the Whoopi Goldberg film? No, I don't think so. But I mean, I have to say, my history with bad films goes even further back, unfortunately, because I used to have a flatmate he was a nice guy, don't get me wrong, absolutely lovely guy, but he had this very weird thing that one day we were chatting, we were up quite late, and then he turned around and he said, I want to watch a bad movie. And I was like, oh, right, okay, stereotypical bad movies like, Transformers or something. He goes, no. I want to watch I want to watch the worst of the worst. So it got to a point where he was scouring the worst of the worst on IMDb. I'm not going to lie, there's some films that I had to watch which should never be watched by another human because of just how utterly dross. Yeah, there was there was just so many weird ones. I mean, there was Santa with Muscles, which honestly looked like Citizen Kane compared to some of the ones I watched. I watched this utterly horrific one called Ben and Arthur. Have you ever heard of this one?
Can't say I have, no.
Good. Don't watch it. It's like this weird LGBT love drama that's not well done at all, with a guy who's clearly punching above his weight. It's like when they cast the guy to be his boyfriend, I'm like, nah, there's no way. And it's like the church are trying to give them potions to turn straight. It's like, what even is this film? But you've got those kind of films that are just in their own pocket of weirdness. But then you've got ones that are actually very entertaining. Of course, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So starting off, you have your adaptation films, which I feel as if is the low-hanging fruit that we should just throw out the window right now. You've got your video game adaptations with the infamous Uwe Boll films with, I can't even remember what he did, Blood Rain, Alone in the Dark, and then you've got like the Super Mario Brothers film. But then you've got ones like Street Fighter, which are bad, but can be entertaining. Is it right in saying that there was quite a mix at the time for those kind of films?
Street Fighter is one of the ones that I think is pretty good as a bad film. You know what I mean? As in, like, it was pretty enjoyable. It is funny because some of them TV'd out are like bad, and some of them are like good, bad. I think it does depend. But yeah, I think definitely being like a licensed thing gives you a bit of a leg up on how ridiculous people are going to find you. But saying that, I will say the Doom movie starring The Rock was just boring, which I think is like the worst criticism you can give of any film, good or bad. But in the case of bad movies, that's a death sentence. You know what I mean? Like a bad movie, like these video game ones, they get ridiculed because they've strayed off the path of whatever it's supposed to be, or it's like so cheesy, like Street Fighter, but it's just completely lost all meaning. But you do get other ones like Doom. I think I've seen that film Doom now twice, and I remember the one scene that everyone remembers from it, which is the first person scene. I can't remember anything else about it. So yeah, most of the time the adaptations are usually a good sign, but you get a couple that are a bit naff.
Yeah, can we just focus on that particular trope of a film being boring as an instant death sentence? Because I feel as if a lot of the films that we watched for Woeful Wednesdays and further on, those were the ones that weren't redeemable, not because they weren't well shot or anything, but just because they were just pure concentrated dullness and there was no reason for them. It's like you can imagine some poor indie content creator who's saying, oh, this is my vision of don't know, like, for example, one of the worst ones we saw was, and I apologise in advance for this name because it'll probably be something we'll touch on later, but A Nymphoid Barbarian in Dinosaur Hell. That was one of the worst films I've seen, I would say. And again, it mixes all of the bad tropes together. You know, it deals with unwanted assault, unwanted nudity, unwanted bad effects, and most of all, it's just flat out boring. You know, it's just you sit there thinking, when is this going to end? And then when it ends, you're like, I mean, that was just dull. But the worst one, and I feel as if we have been joking about this since the podcast began, but I feel as if we need to briefly touch on it. So I'm looking at the Red Panda lawyer. He has advised me that he will pay your therapy bills after this episode.
I was going to say, I don't want to talk about this, man. I don't want to. I might hang up.
We've got to talk about Turkish Star Wars for at least 2 minutes and counting.
Right, start the clock.
So, Turkish Star Wars is the worst war crime in our modern age. All I'll say is the Court of Human Rights didn't get back to me when I emailed them about this being an utter crime against humanity. It is one of those films that everybody said, and even you said this, that people online say, oh, it's amazing, it's one of these so bad it's good films, it's so over the top and so silly. And then we watched it as a group, and even watching it as a group, usually that has some kind of defence against a bad film, but that did not help at all, did it?
It was easily the most tragic thing I've ever seen. What's quite funny is, like, there's clips of it on YouTube. I think that's where people get their brain tuned into it, is, like, on YouTube it's distilled into, like, a 2-minute clip, and it's really funny, because the high moments of that film were pretty good, but it was just terrible. I think it was really long as well. I think it was, like, 2.5 hours or something. After the film ended, we all just kind of, like, left in silence. And I laid on my floor, just staring up at the ceiling for about 20 minutes.
You didn't even see us out, though.
No,
that was the thing.
No,
you just lay on the floor and said, see yourself out. And I was like, what? It's like, Craig, are you sure you're okay? You're just like, go. Be gone.
It was amazing that we all didn't just dissolve as a friend group after that, if I'm being totally real. It was honestly one of the worst experiences of my life. I hope to never talk about it really ever again, because you've got 4 seconds left until this 2 minutes is up.
Because just briefly summarising like why this film is bad is basically the hook of it is it's some guy probably from Turkey, you know, I'm going to put my Sherlock hat on here and say he's probably from Turkey, and he does this thing where he interjects Star Wars footage with his own footage, and I have to say that's not the first time we saw that, because there was another weird film we watched whose name is escaping me, but that had a similar thing of it was so long and boring, where half of the film was these ninjas fighting one another, and this ninja clad in like black or red robes and everything, and he had a sword that kept getting progressively redder the more ninjas he killed. But then the other half of the film was this either, I don't know if it was like a Chinese slice of life film or something, but what they had done was they had dubbed over it and they had just made this completely different film. Then at the end they intersected the two when he put himself in this terrible green screen, and it was like, Jim, tell me how to defeat the evil ninja. And that guy is like, oh, I can't fight with you. Here's a scroll that my granddad gave me or something. And it was like, none of it matched up. It was two completely clearly different films. Yet they tried to weave it together. Scorsese, who's he, you know, compared to this film? It was just weird, was it? Do you actually remember that film?
Yeah, I wanted to call it Gordon the Ninja, but I actually think it's called like Ninja Dragon or something.
Yeah, it was. It was like some really dumb generic name. No offense to the Gordons and the last of them film, but you know that way when you want a hero, you want something dramatic and over the top. You know, you don't want well, I suppose Flash Gordon, but even then, Gordon, he's like the grumpy one out of Thomas the Tank, for God's sake. That is definitely one of the things that kills a bad film, I would say. I mean, there's loads of films like that, but weirdly enough, one other negative trope I want to bring up, and I want your opinion on this, is the idea of a bad film being too self-aware.
Yes.
2 examples off the top of my head I can think of here is Birdemic 2, which Birdemic 1 is stupid. It's over the top, it's not great, but you can still laugh at it. But then in Birdemic 2, James James Nguyen, who is the director of this quote-unquote romantic thriller, I think he called it, or tried to trademark, but he used all the jokes from the last film. He was doing it intentionally, so it does not work at all. I think another one that you brought up was Samurai Cop 2. Did that not do it?
Yeah, Samurai Cop 2 is pretty much the same as what you were describing there for Birdemic, is when they're in on the joke, it's not as funny. Kind of like, this will be both in the positive and the negative thing, but for me, like, a good bad movie needs to be like well-intentioned. They have to have been trying to make something good and it happens to be funny. If they're trying to make something funny and it's usually bad, one of the best sort of examples of that when you're watching a bad movie is it's really hard to watch a good bad movie that's a comedy, because bad humor is just not funny. If that makes sense, it's much harder to laugh at a bad comedy because it's usually just not funny than it is to laugh at like a bad action film because it's usually unintentionally funny. So yeah, the sequel bait, the intentionally made terrible movies, they're always a tough watch, I think.
So in other words, insert any Rob Schneider film in here,
Yeah.
which is a whole other genre in itself. But I mean, going back to ones like Birdemic, Samurai Cop, I mean, they are ones that are bad. Objectively, they are bad films, but they swing back around again to being so entertaining that you can't help but laugh at it. And I'm curious to hear what you think about this, but do you think with the advent of reviews of films like The Room that bad movie watching kind of got popularised? I mean, between that and, as you said, red letter media, do you think that's when it started getting popularised in the mainstream?
Yeah, I think so. There was, what was it called, Mystery Science Theatre back in sort of the 90s. It kind of did it, but that kind of internet swell of it, I think, was red letter media, was a lot of them responsible. When you things like The Room, where effectively that film became, obviously you've always had cult films, but it's so bonkers for a film that's so bad to make so much money, and it's only been possible because of it sort of being rediscovered, so to speak. Same with things like Samurai Cop as well. I definitely think, yeah, red letter media have a lot to answer to in terms of years of our life taken off of us.
It's like, on the one hand, we did get all those hilarious exposures to these films, but on the other side, yeah, they made us watch Turkish Star Wars. So I'm not saying they should be before a court, but what I'm saying is they should be before a court. But yeah, I feel as if a good bad film is one that is exaggerated in what it's trying to achieve. Because what was the film, and you'll know this better than me, but the one where it was a frog telling a woman to shut her hole, quote unquote, and it was like this weird Mad Max apocalyptic film.
That would be Hell Comes to Frogtown, starring professional wrestler Rowdy Roddy Piper.
That is the one, yeah. A classic for the
age. Classic for ages. I think a marker of a film usually being bad up until like 2018 was having a wrestler in it. I'm just going to throw that out there. Up until like John Cena and Batista come through, it's usually a pretty bad mark to have a wrestler in it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the perfect time to talk about a certain Hulk of the Hogan kind.
The greatest of all wrestlers.
You know, we have so many. We've got, was it 3 ninjas he did?
It was, yep. I
don't know if he did surf ninjas. There was a lot of ninja films back in the 80s and 90s. We had Suburban Commando, which was both excellent and baffling. We also had Santa with Muscles, which again, super strange, but just so entertaining. But I feel as if you see Hulk Hogan, you're in for like a classically, entertainingly bad time. Yes. You see that handlebar mustache and you know it's over. You just start crossing yourself. But you're completely right though. The flip side of that though, I mean, wrestlers obviously make their living in the ring doing these action stunts, whereas you get people on the other side whose job it is to be action stars. Some of them don't live up as much as others. A particular fellow that I'm thinking of right now is one of the Seagal variety.
Oh yes,
Mr. Steven Seagal. Oh,
okay. You're just gonna. I thought you were trying to be like coy there, like Seagal. Oh no, Steven Seagal. Yep.
On the one hand, I really want to talk about this, but on the other hand, I'm afraid he'll come to my house and beat me up. I'll be like, "Wow, Steven Seagal!" Just do his aura manipulation. That's just
the world's slowest punches, man.
one of the worst films I've seen of his was this really weird FBI drama. I don't know if I've told you about this. It was like this FBI agent that I could swear looks like, and it's been a while since I've seen it, but it's this kind of relatively podgy guy that looks like Sam from Lord of the Rings. And he runs around and people are saying to him, this guy you're hunting doesn't exist. And it's obviously Steven Seagal, who in a rare instance is the antagonist in this film. But then in the end, he has a fist fight with him and you're like, so was he real? Was he not real? And it's not like this kind of Inception mind-bending, oh, what did you think? I'm like, no, what the hell was... Because I mean, you've also got his take on Taken, no pun intended. Yep. You've got Under Siege 2, which we spent a whole night trying to figure out the geography of this one train car.
I do want to talk about Under Siege 2.
Please do.
It has one of my favourite action sequences in it ever, and it's the final fight, which admittedly final fights are always hard to do, but it's him and the big bad, and they're alone in the train carriage finally, and Steven Seagal's just, Kung Fu or whatever martial art he knows, attacking the guy, blah, blah. And what they did, you notice it instantly that something's not right, and it's what they've done is they sped it up to make him look faster in the fight scenes, because obviously he's just moving at a snail's pace, but they've sped it up so he's like, oh, look how fast these punches are. It's brilliantly funny. I don't know why they didn't just use a stunt double. You know what I mean? Just have one throw punches for him because Manny was obviously tired, and they sped up the footage afterwards, and it's so good. It looks so hokey. It's a great film.
Oh, come on, Craig. I don't want to get sued by anyone on here. You're like, I got emotional damage by listening to a Chatsunami recommendation. Under Siege 2, go see it. It's like, no, for legal reasons. It's a joke.
Watch the fight scene at the end on YouTube.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Don't watch anything else. Just watch the scene with the guy. Oh, no, it's Robocop. Do you know what's a weird thing? It's this Mandela effect I've got. I always think, when he falls off the train at the end and there's the explosion, for some reason I keep thinking he's the guy where his arms get longer for no reason. But that's Robocop, and I don't know why I keep getting them mixed up. And then I watch Die Hard, and I'm like, why is his arms not getting longer? And I'm like, it's not Die Hard, it's Robocop, damn it. But there is one particular genre of bad films that are so good that I want to draw your attention to. That, of course, being the Nicolas Cage variety, which are so goofy and over the top that they are just chef kiss. Absolutely masterpieces of cinema, aren't they?
I mean, the Wicker Man remake, I think, has been our favourite one. That was incredible. Just him running about an old town punching people in the face.
In a bear suit.
Till he dies at the end. Sorry, spoilers if you haven't
seen it. Who's going to watch Wicker Man?
It did come out in like 2004 or something.
I bet you there are people out there who watch it and, they get to the Not the Bees scene and then they just turn it off and go, what a great film.
I wonder if we got out of that one.
We'll never know. Ironically enough, I think that's how the original one ends, but it's obviously more serious. I mean, him getting burned alive in the Wicker Tower, not him with the bees.
The thing is, that's actually a pretty good ending. Yeah. If it wasn't for him screaming before it.
Yeah, with his Nicolas Cage-isms. Not the bees. Oh. I love it so much, because one of the ones, I don't even know if this can be considered as like a bad film. Like, it's bad, but it's actually growing on me as one of my favourite bad films, Willy's Wonderland. Okay. Have you seen this one?
I have not.
Oh, watch it. You will not regret it. It's basically about Nicolas Cage, who he is mute. Ironically enough, he is mute throughout the entire film. He breaks down in the middle of nowhere, and to pay for his car getting fixed, they say, oh, go into this Chuck E. Cheese-esque place, like Five Nights, okay, yeah. And then, oh, surprise, the animatronics are alive and he has to fight his way out. But half of the film is your stereotypical dumb teens going into this place, getting picked off one by one. The other half is Nicolas Cage fighting these animatronics, and it is the coolest thing ever. It's one of those films that genuinely, it was like the first time I watched The Raid, it just made me happy inside. I was like, this is sick. I love it. 10 out of 10. Well, not 10 out of 10, but in terms of bad film,
11 out of 10.
I would wholeheartedly recommend it. But I mean, he has done so many. I mean, you've got your face-offs.
I think it's all even good films with him in it loop round and become kind of stinky because he's in it. You know what I mean? Like, I watched Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent recently.
Oh, so good.
And that's just like, it's terrible, but it's so good. But it's perfect in every way.
I never knew that I wanted a film with Pedro Pascal and Nick Cage, but it was everything I wanted and more.
I didn't know I wanted a film where Nicolas Cage gave up acting and just played himself, and it was still incredible. He's just top notch.
The only thing I would dock at a point for is I saw the memes on TikTok and things before I actually saw the film. You know the exact meme I'm talking about where they look at one another
Yeah.
and they're smiling, and it's that song, it's like Make Your Own Kind of Music, and Pedro Pascal's like smiling and Nick Cage is just like looking as if he's done. That song is not in the film. The scene is obviously, but that song isn't. I had a moment literally where I was in a Waterstones with my girlfriend and that song came on and she looked at me with the Nick Cage face and I looked at her with the Pedro Pascal face, just so happy. But one of the other films that I want to bring attention to quickly is a film that you and I have said is a great film, and it's that blend of people who are either film students or, again, indie creators that make their own films. And whether it's a fan film or it's their own particular project, one of the ones that always has stood out to me is Space Trucker Bruce. I actually remember this was one of the earlier ones that we watched in Woeful Wednesdays, and it was so good, surprisingly.
So there was a list for Woeful Wednesdays of like what I rated all the films, and we tried to put them in some kind of order, and there was a couple that we watched that didn't belong on the list. I don't think it belonged on the list because it was unironically a brilliant film, but basically it was like this guy made his own sci-fi film for like $10,000 over the course of like 6 years, like just a passion project of this guy, and it was really, really, really good. It was like really heartfelt, really funny. It was a blast, and we went in expecting to kind of laugh at it, and then by the end we were like, it took us along for the journey. We were completely in the wrong to ever expect it to be bad. I'm going to go as far as saying it's probably one of the better films I've ever seen, in the sense of I was expecting so little, and so for it to blow me away like that, it was like a complete 180. It was probably one of my favourite finds that we found in the entire time we did it. Yeah, Space Trucker Bruce.
No, it is surprising. See, when you get a film that is just made with such love and passion for it, because it is something that you see it attempted. Going back to Birdemic, you see this guy who really wanted to make a love story, but instead he got them to run into places, shoved a camera in their face, and then ran out again because he wasn't allowed to film there. You've got The Room, which, what I will say in defence of The Room is it's one of those films that is shot really well. Like, the cinematography is actually very, very competent, and I don't know if it's just because it's something that we are not used to watching bad films, because that is something as well that does make a good bad film if it's shot competently. There's that infamous scene in Taken 3 where there's like 20 cuts of Liam Neeson jumping over a fence. That will never not baffle and confuse me, to think, why did it take so many cuts just to show you throwing Liam Neeson over a fence? But yeah, I feel as if cinematography definitely is one of those things, but in terms of passion, nah, I wouldn't say it's great. But one of the tropes that I do think is quite bad, and I'm curious to hear what you have to say about this, is someone trying to twist an original story into their vision, but just utterly messing it up. Taking a family-friendly icon, for example, Silent Night, Deadly Night, and then turning Santa into a killer, which obviously Silent Night, Deadly Night probably wasn't the first. There was one of, but definitely not the first. Or you had Blood and Honey for Winnie the Pooh, or you had Slender Man, haha, for legal reasons, that's a joke. But, you know, you have all these films trying to be avant-garde. Oh, look, it's a new twist on the story, but they never do it right.
I think as well, the joke's done, not one and gone. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the problem with these kind of films. And it's like, aha, look, Santa's a murderer. That's a pretty funny 4-panel comic. And especially when they go for like the horror or the shock value, I think it's much harder to do that kind of story. And obviously, there has been thousands upon thousands of successful films and movies where they've taken something and twisted it out of context. But typically, these shocky horror films, it's usually horror films are like action, and yet the joke could have been a piece of paper. You know, that's usually what happens. It's like, oh, isn't it funny that Winnie the Pooh's violent? Yeah, I guess that's pretty funny. And then you have to sit there for another hour and a half.
One of the other ones, not really an adaptation as such, but one of the ones that I noted down was Baby Geniuses. Have you ever seen that film?
Yes.
I remember watching it when I was younger, and I feel as if my fight or flight instinct has kicked in, where I've just repressed 90% of the film, but there's just some slivers that come through every now and then, where it's like, hey, remember when they CGI'd a baby dancing to Night Fever, even though it was made in the 90s? Or they had a really creepy scene between a baby and a homeless person. You're like, what was that film? But again, it's that idea that they've thought, oh, what would happen if, babies could talk? What would they say? And it's like, we've already got that adaptation that's called The Bloody Rugrats. They've just done it worse. Or I suppose then you go into things like Howard the Duck territory, where it's like, what would happen? And I know that's based off the comic and everything, but it's like, what would happen if we had a foul-mouthed duck? And
what would happen if Gary Busey was hit by a car and turned into a dog?
Oh, I forgot about that.
That's a real film. For those of you who don't know, that is a real film.
What was that called? Do you remember?
It was called, I actually was Googling it just there, it's called Quigley.
I forgot about that. That's another one I've repressed because it's the weirdest and most disturbing film I think I've watched in my life, where, as you said, he gets hit by a car, he turns into a dog for some reason.
Yes.
But the dog is like jumping up on children's laps and everything.
Yeah, licking people's faces.
Yeah, and he's got a collar when he turns back to human, and it's supposed to be this, endearing, family-friendly adventure, and I'm like, this isn't fun. This is horrible. No, stop making Gary Busey whimsical. This isn't going to work, guys.
It's on YouTube.
Is it actually?
Just in case you need to know, yeah.
For legal reasons, the views expressed tonight by Craigy C do not represent the entire Chatsunami community. I will be issuing a cease and desist after this.
See what you can, the damage is done.
You've said it.
Quigley's back out.
There's just so many films you just sit there and you think, why? And I think as well that is definitely a thing that differentiates a good bad film from a bad film. If you have things like Samurai Cop or Kung Fury or something like that, where they go out to parody a particular genre, and again, it's debatable, as you said, putting it on the list, but like with Space Trucker Bruce, they wanted to make a love letter to these sci-fi films. But then you get films like Bone Alone, where it's literally just Home Alone with dogs. And I've got to ask the question, why? Who hurt you and why?
This is one that we do see a lot of, isn't it? It's dog-related ones. Obviously Quigley, Bone Alone.
Cats and Dogs.
Russell Mania, which was a Jack Russell that became a wrestler. Santa Paws, Santa Claus, various sort of jokes on that. Obviously all the Airbuds. I think dogs just sell well, maybe, and that's why people think they can make it. It would be easy to make a film with a dog in it.
Well, there's also cat films as well. I know they kind of go hand in hand, or paw in paw. Yeah. I didn't say you came to Chatsunami for the high A-grade quality jokes, but I mean, there was one that they did for... Do you remember Grumpy Cat?
Oh, yep.
Yeah, apparently they made a film of Grumpy Cat. The only exposure I've had to it was watching someone else review it, because I thought, you know what, life's too short. I'd rather watch this 10 or 20 minute video recapping it rather than me going in and watching it blind. But there's actually a scene where they show them euthanizing Grumpy Cat. Yeah, they put like a gas mask over him, and it's like, go to bed. And you're like, right, there's no purpose there. It's just... There was no thought. They just thought, we've got Grumpy Cat. And I know, again, that's low-hanging fruit as well. If we go into internet-based films, you've got your Smosh movie and things like that. And I think there was that Smiley film where they tried to make memes threatening. Which, you don't have to tell me twice. I'm on TikTok. I'm already threatened by Gen Z memes when I don't understand them. I'm like, why is there a hot dog dancing? I don't get it. Or you don't get the rich intricacies. But, you get the ones like Slender Man, or I saw a really weird one recently. It was a Spanish film called like The Killer Book Club. I think I've just resigned myself to the fact that I just don't like horror films. Not because they scare me, but most of them are just so bad. Especially Slender Man. Do not waste your time. It's not even a haha so bad it's good film. It's just the scuff. I slept and then I woke up and nothing had happened except some lassie was screaming because, oh no, the Slender Man. Which I don't get how you can be so scared about someone with such an immaculate suit.
That's the scary thing, is like how he keeps it so immaculate.
Exactly. I mean, these dry-cleaning bills must be through that.
That's the real terror.
Financial debt of Slender Man. Someone make that into a film. I don't care if it's like a James Cameron 5-hour cut in IMAX. I want to feel the steam.
Oppenheimer adjacent. Just him sitting looking at his tax returns for like 3 hours.
And just explosions in between. 2 out of 10, too much talking.
Yeah, I was going to say Logan Paul walks out 2 minutes in.
Before we wrap up, though, would you say there's anything else that differentiates the gold standard of bad films from just regular guff?
I think we've kind of touched on it, and I think it has to be like a passion project. I think that's what makes them good. We mentioned Samurai Cop, but that was like a love letter to action movies. My guy that doesn't understand how to make action films. The Room, obviously, it was his passion. I know he's tried to disown it later, the director thing was all, but that was a passion project as well.
Yeah.
You can tell the films, a lot of them that we did watch for the movie club, and a lot of them were bad because they were just cash grabs.
Like Ice Pirates.
Like Ice Pirates. But some of them were pretty good, and even the ones that were kind of cash grabs usually had someone in it. Like whether it was an actor, whether it was someone doing the effects, someone was going mental for this film. You know what I mean? A lot of people lose a lot of money in these films just because they're so passionate about it. And I think like that's what separates a good bad film from a bad film, is that level of just passion, creativity, stupidity. I guess love makes people blind, and I guess when you love your own projects, you can't see how bad they are. And that's what makes it so good. Yeah, that would kind of be my conclusion to it all.
No, I couldn't have said it better myself, to be honest. But no, you're completely right. It is one of those fine lines that, on the one hand, most of these films that we've put in this list, I don't think they go out to be bad films. Like, there's some films that are so bad and they try to be bad, like that. Is it Film 42 or something like that? Film something? Or Film 43?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Isn't it Movie 43?
Yeah, Movie 43 was like Hugh Jackman and all of these like A-list celebrities. It was just awful script writing. It was like awful jokes and things, just because of like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if we did this or we did that? And if you're going to go into purposely trying to make a bad film, it's like if you and I came in and made a purposely bad podcast or a bad Let's Play or something, you know, people are going to know. They're going to easily pick up, because as much as, you know, I weep for humanity when I see the next Transformers film come out, people aren't stupid. They'll know when a film is bad. They might still consume it and rinse and repeat. Just ask Pokemon fans. For legal reasons, that's another joke. But yeah, if you're trying to create something either out of love or out of, just genuine passion, that is going to shine through. Unlike Sharknado, which I have to admit I haven't watched, but I'm going to be honest, now they're on, Sharknado 20 or something?
For what's worth of the Sharknado, I know we've kind of just believed it away, but real quick on all the Asylum monster movies, is I do believe there's someone in that studio that loves monster movies, and they are just terrible, but it's because they are monster movies, and I think monster movies are their own special category because they're hard to be good. But I do think there are people who do genuinely enjoy making the Sharknado films. I think there's a sick enjoyment of people that make them. Yeah,
there is that pocket of people who are big monster movie fans. For example, when you and I watched Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, and that was just so bad, but it was just so entertaining that it didn't really matter, did it, whether it was a bad film or not? Like, especially with the effects and everything, and the same for all of these hokey monster films.
Yeah, and I think things like Godzilla versus King Ghidorah as well, that was pretty high budget, which is, I think, a big plus, because again, that was like someone's passion project. Godzilla is like a passion project for me. It's like a film that's maybe going to work on. So like that's what makes those films so good. Like monster movies, I think, do get a bad rap, but they're also usually a pretty good gold mine for this stuff.
So at the end of the day, if you're looking for a bad film, feel free to check out some of the ones we've mentioned. We have actually also reviewed and talked about some of these bad films. As I said, we did a great watch along with Godzilla versus King Ghidorah. We also did Japanese Spider-Man as well, which is arguably on the same level. Adam and I talked about Bone Alone and Silent Night, Deadly Night. One of the films we should actually talk about is Santa with Muscles.
Let's do it. I'd be thrilled.
Yeah, because I feel as if it's one of those films that I've yet to talk about, and I feel as if I'm in a safe space if I talk about it with you.
I'm glad you feel that way.
But I mean, between that, the amount of Hulk Hogan films, Samurai Cop, maybe not Birdemic, that's kind of a hit or a miss. You know, you've got Willy's Wonderland, as I said. To be honest, those kind of films that are so bad but so entertaining, just go in at your own discretion, and if you hate it, we are not to blame. I don't know what a Chatsunami is, do you?
No.
And at the end of the day, not taking responsibility is what I do best. And on that note, on that note, Craig, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
My pleasure. I think I'm away to go watch the 1981 American action movie where they filmed it in an actual safari park and a lot of people got hurt, called Raw. So I'll chat to you later.
Did they actually? Well, fun times.
I've got it on Blu-ray.
Okay, I am just going to prepare the car to come over. I'll get the snacks and everything. I'll be right over. But as I'm driving over, if you want to listen to more of our episodes while I'm away, you can check out our website, chatsunami.com, as well as all good podcast apps. Just look for the Red Panda under the name Chatsunami, and we'll see you there. I also want to give a huge shout out to our Pandalorian patrons, Robotic Battle Toaster and Sonia. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. But until then, stay safe, stay awesome, stay hydrated, and for legal reasons, this episode has been a joke. Steven Seagal, please don't come for us. Welcome to Chatsunami, a variety podcast that discusses topics from gaming and films to anime and general interests.
Previously on Chatsunami, we've analysed what makes a good horror game, conducted a retrospective on Pierce Brosnan's run as James Bond, and listened to us take deep dives into both the Sonic and Halo franchises.
Also, if you're an anime fan, then don't forget to check us out on our sub-series, Chatsunami, where we dive into the world of anime. So far, we've reviewed things like Death Note, Princess Mononoke, and the hit Beyblade series.
If that sounds like your cup of tea, then you can check us out on Spotify, iTunes, and all good podcast apps.
As always, stay safe,
Stay awesome, and most importantly,
Stay hydrated.
You know all those enthusiastic international film podcasts? Yeah, this isn't one of those. Welcome to Review It Yourself, the podcast with the sigh. Film reviews with no politics, no pandering, and absolutely no point. No wacky intros, no segments, no blaring music, just a rather pessimistic Englishman talking about films with a guest. You can tell by no one's listening, can't you?